those lessons of my life and summed up, as you know, Tim, in a quote by Jackie, which has become to me the most meaningful quote that I've ever heard applying to life and applying to our world today. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Madigan. This is the Anything Mentionable podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you are of a certain age, a baseball fan of a certain age, or maybe just a baseball fan generally, you probably remember this moment. That happened on October 15th, 1988. It was game one of that year's World Series between the heavily favored Oakland Athletics and the Los Angeles Dodgers. It was the bottom of the ninth. Pitching for Oakland was their famous closer, Dennis Eckersley. And one of the issues facing the Dodgers was that their best player, their slugger, Kirk Gibson, was hurt. He had two bad legs and was out and could not play in the game. But lo and behold, in the ninth inning, he comes hobbling out of the dugout with a bat in his hands, digs in at the plate, and then this happened.
Sachs waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone!
Remember that night?
Remember it well, Tim.
This is my guest today is Fred Clare, who is the general manager of that team and put together that team. And he also, as in recent years, has become a very good friend of mine. One of my been rereading the book we did together. It's called Extra Innings. Fred Clare's Journey to the City of Hope and Finding Another World Championship Team was published, I believe, in 2020. And that was one of my favorite experiences, and also maybe one of my most important books for the things we're going to talk about. And last October, my friend turned 90 years old. Is that right, Fred?
October the 5th, I turned 90. So I'm very blessed to be here, to be with you. And many thanks to the City of Hope and wonderful friends and a wonderful wife who's given tremendous support.
Well, I would agree with all of that, especially the wonderful wife part. Speaking of marrying up or out of your league, I don't know how you pulled it off, but Cheryl Clare is also one of my favorite people. But when you watch that clip now, I know that this has been a time for you, and frankly, it's something of a miracle that you're here with us, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But when you watch that clip, how often do you think about that moment? Because this is truly one of the greatest moments in Major League history, and you were such an important part of that. I think the average person would wonder, how does that stay with you, or how often do you think about it, or what do you think about when you see that clip being played again?
You know, Tim, I think about it in a different way today, because the man of the moment was Kirk Gibson. So I think more about Kirk today than I did at that time. And the reason was that Kirk, in recent years, was hit with Parkinson's. And what he's doing today in a major way with a center in Michigan to help patients carries more meaning for me than the home run. Because I've lived long enough to know what really is important in our lives. And it's not surprising that Kirk would be such a fighter for a terrible disease that struck him, because he was all about the team. And being all about the team, his main thought today, as one can see online, is to help other patients. And so that's how I cherish that moment, as all Dodger fans and hopefully millions of baseball fans do, because it's forever memorable. But it's just a point in time and has to be put, for me, in a context of the life of a person who has been able to impact lives.
You have one of my thoughts as I prepared for talking to you today, and again, this is two close friends talking, and I know that you and Cheryl have become such blessings in my life, and I've come to have a pretty good idea of what makes you tick. And I knew that this conversation was going to be a lot about things like character, things like integrity, things like generosity, things like humanity, because you have been that way throughout your career, as many people can attest, but particularly in the last part of your life where service has been so important to you. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, to kind of drill more deeply into that topic, is in the course of your baseball career, you got to know Jackie Robinson. And I was wondering if one of the man who, one of American history's most important figures, and the man who broke the color barrier in baseball back in the 40s, and I was wondering if you could tell me, what he was like. Tell me about Jackie Robinson, because I know that you knew him and you're still friendly with his wife Rachel. And so talk about Jackie Robinson for a moment.
Well, I first met Jackie in 1972. I was in marketing for the Dodgers. I joined the Dodgers in 1969. So in June of 1972, we started an old timers game. And on that occasion, we made the decision to retire the first three numbers in Dodger history. The numbers of Sandy Koufax, of Roy Campanella, and Jackie Robinson. So that's when I first met Jackie, and I was standing with him and a group of people before the ceremony was to start. And there was a fan in the stands. We were right in front of the Dodger dugout. And the fan started to yell, "Jackie, Jackie, sign this ball," holding up a ball. And he threw it at Jackie, and it hit him on the shoulder, bounced up and hit him in the head, and the ball fell to the ground. Everyone around Jackie said, "Get that guy, get that person, throw him out of the park, get him out of here." And Jackie, being Jackie, said, calm down, calm down. Hand me the ball. They handed Jackie the ball. Give me a pen. They gave him a pen. He signed the ball, and he said, give it back to the gentleman. That captured Jackie. In a storm, he was calm. In a storm, he rose to the occasion. And that was 1972 in June. My next meeting with Jackie came in October of that year, when Jackie was invited to throw out the pitch, honorary first pitch, in Cincinnati before the start of the World Series between Cincinnati and Oakland. And it's well documented. Several things stand out on that day. Jackie said to the commissioner, Louis Kuhn, I will throw out the honorary ball if you give me a chance to speak. Jackie's words are well documented on the internet. Jackie, being very smart as he handled everything, said, baseball has made good progress, but I will not be happy until I see a black man in the third base coaching box, meaning as a manager. There had been no black manager at that time. And as it turned out at that ceremony, Jackie was 52 years old. He was there for a purpose, and with his family, to call attention to what he knew was a very important cause. Jackie Robinson died 9 days later at the age of 52. But I was so struck. That time I wasn't quite 40. A lot of my life, fortunately for me, left to live. But it made an impact on me in terms of just being in the presence of Jackie. Because he was struggling. Before that ceremony, I was standing with Jackie and others, and this person walked up to the group, and Jackie didn't acknowledge the person. His diabetes was so bad, he couldn't see him. And not until someone whispered in Jackie's ear, Jackie, it's Pee-wee. And they embraced. Strangely enough, fittingly enough, in the city of Cincinnati, where years before, Pee-wee on the field came over to put his arm around Jackie. Those lessons of my life, and summed up, as you know, Tim, in a quote by Jackie, which has become, to me, the most meaningful quote that I've ever heard, applying to life and applying to our world today. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. When I think about that, I think about many things. I think about City of Hope, which we mentioned, which has me here today. But I think more importantly, on that quote, each and every one of us has the opportunity each and every day to impact other lives. You don't have to be a star baseball player. You don't have to be a former baseball executive. You can be who you are in so many ways. And the great part about this country is that people not only have the ability to do it, but they do it. And I know you're from Minnesota, proud to be from Minnesota. The impact of the people of Minnesota as recent times and will long be remembered in history, will well be remembered for people standing up, impacting other lives. So at the age of 90, Tim, those are things that I think about more than I think about a game that was played nearly 40 years ago. Wonderful memories, but I think the outlook at the age of 90 becomes somewhat different. I haven't said this many times. I used to think of life, and we can all do this, in terms of decades. Mm. I was born in 1935. That dates me because it was in the middle of Franklin Roosevelt's first term as President of the United States. As a 9-year-old, when President Roosevelt died in 1945, living in a small town in Jamestown, I can well remember people running up and down the street. The president has died. So there's one thing in decades to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and you not only think back, but you think ahead. Mm. And at 90, that's an interesting perspective to be about where you're going to be in the next decade. Now, I went in to get my driver's license recently at the age of 90, and that driver's license is now good until 2030. When I go in 5 years from now, that driver's license will be good through 2035. Considering I was born in 1935, I can tell you I'm a very fortunate man. So I've kidded Cheryl and friends. Probably not something to kid about. But I've now joined a club. It's very difficult to get into. It's the 90 Club. Hard to get into and easy to get out of. So I think what's really important is people thinking about what do they want to be. And I can remember being with Walter O'Malley when he was interviewed by a fellow from United Press International. I still remember the name, Jim Coore. And Walter asked me to be with him during this interview. And I was there. At the end of the interview, Jim asked him a question that I thought was most interesting. Mr. O'Malley was probably in his late 70s at that time, would be my guess. He said, Mr. O'Malley, what do you want to be remembered for? And I can remember thinking at the time, as young as I was, wow, that's a hell of a question.
Hmm.
And Walter, as I remember, spun that cigar, and he said, I want to be remembered for planting a tree.
Hmm.
I'll never forget that quote. I thought, wow.
Hmm.
Because Walter's family was so important. His son, Peter, who I had the pleasure to work for many years. His daughter, Terry, who left us just recently at the age of 92, are such wonderful, caring people. Dodger Stadium today, and probably the most valuable franchise in baseball, certainly without question today,
Mm-hmm.
the best team in baseball. Really, one of the best stadiums, if not the best stadium in baseball. It's all related to Walter O'Malley. So those are things that I'm sure young people pass a lot of this off like thoughts of a 90-year-old. But it was brought back, and I'll stop on this point. The wonderful Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, said, Mr. Munger, someone asked him, now that you're older, what is your legacy? What do you think your legacy is? And Charlie Munger, in so many words, said, you know what about legacy? You create your legacy every day of your life. You don't start, he didn't say this, but implied it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start at 50, or 60, 70, or 80. You're certainly not at 90 to create a legacy. Every day of your life. And so those, I've been very blessed, Tim, as you know, to be around people of the highest quality. And I was on a show recently titled Integrity. And the three people that came to my mind on that show were Jackie, was a wonderful friend, Vin Scully, and a wonderful friend in Coach John Wooden. Because if I was going to establish models to follow, I'd put them at the top of the list.
Going back to your story about Jackie, the Pee Wee you were referring to as Pee Wee Reese, who befriended him at the time when the racism that Jackie was confronting was most virulent, and when and Pee Wee had to have a conversion of his own to get to that place. I think to be more open-minded, but it's that that motto of Jackie's that became yours, and I don't know that there's ever been anyone who's more fiercely adhered to that model, especially later on in your life. It just, when you were what was reasonable to expect dying of cancer after your diagnosis, metastasized skin cancer in 2016, and you'd become exposed to the spirit, the talent, the love, the humanity of the City of Hope. Your head wasn't about how am I going to survive. It's like, how can I call attention to this place and these people? And we're gonna get back to that in a second. I want I want to circle back a bit to your baseball life. And I'll summarize a bit here. In April of 1987, you were working as the vice president of marketing in the Dodgers organization and had become known as a person of great integrity and character. Al Campanis went on Nightline that night to, as part of the 40th anniversary of Jackie breaking the racial barrier in baseball. And he was on with Ted Koppel and said some things that were really offensive and unfortunate that created a huge scandal. That a big problem for Peter O'Malley, who was the owner of the team at the time. And people were picketing Dodger Stadium, and it was clear to Peter that for all his years of service to the Dodgers, that Al Campana had to go. Campanis, but he needed someone to calm the seas. He needed a person of integrity, and he turned to you, a person with no formal training on the baseball side of things, and he said to you, Fred, I need you to take this job. And you accepted, but there was an assumption in baseball at the time that you were just a caretaker, that you were just a seat warmer in that position until Mr. O'Malley could find a quote unquote baseball man to lead the business or the baseball operations. So why didn't you just be a caretaker and just kind of punch your time card for a while, because what was it about you that said, no, I'm gonna come in and start kicking some butts around here?
There was one very basic thought to that, which wasn't any different than in any role that I had with the Dodgers. My basic thought was, I'm going to do this job every single day to the best of my ability. I'm going to give this job. I recognize its importance. Every job is important. And that's the way that I approached it. And actually, Peter put it in perspective. One of the writers went to Peter and said, how long will Fred have this job in 1987? And Peter gave a very appropriate answer. He said, he has it for today.
Mm-hmm.
I recognized that. I thought that was good. And because that's the way we should evaluate a job without getting carried away. That's the very way we should evaluate life itself. So I knew that with that position, that I was in an organization with so many wonderful people. And I knew my job was to bring everybody together to the best of my ability. And I loved it. I loved that job as I loved every job I had for the Dodgers for 30 years. How many people are fortunate enough to have a job where every single day they look forward to going to work? And I did. And so I wasn't, clearly I wasn't intimidated in any way. I knew we had to make changes because the year before we had finished 16 games under 500. And so I welcomed the challenge, and being a competitive person more than anything, I love the competition. I love the competition. And So that that run lasted, I guess, 12, maybe it was 13 seasons until 1998, when the O'Malley sold the team. So the memories of that, the friendships of that, um, are truly. I just feel very fortunate.
Uh, to kind of summarize a bit, uh, you took over in the spring of '87. The Dodgers were again not a very good team. They had become kind of a shadow of their former self, um, and but you determined that you were going to put together a new club for 1988, and one that was largely based on character.
Yes.
That you, through all your different sources, before you brought in a player, you wanted to know how that person was as a person. You wanted to know how that person was as a teammate. You wanted to know how that person was as a competitor. And as you know, brought in Mickey Hatcher, you brought in Rick Dempsey, you brought in John Shelton, and Kirk Gibson epitomized that. But so as a result, that group overachieved. And it was because of the cohesion of the team, and it was because of your philosophy and knowing your understanding of how important character was that those people achieved what they did. And I think that one of the great things about sports is that that example happens over and over and over again. That teams overachieve when they play for each other. Teams overachieve when they're unselfish. Teams overachieve when they respect the game. And you and the city of Los Angeles and baseball in general were rewarded by that magic. You know, the Dodgers went on that year. They or the A's never recovered from that Gibson home run. They won the World Series going away, and until recent years, that was the last World Championship the Dodgers had won. And I remember when we were working on the book together, the Dodgers were in the World Series. And I hate to admit this to an old Dodger guy, but I was hoping the Dodgers would lose because I wanted your team to be the last team to win the World Series before the book was published. That's how shallow I am, Fred. But it was remarkable, and to say that, you know, and there in the book you talk about watching that home run and then packing up your briefcase and walking out into an empty parking lot with the stadium still going bananas, and it's like it didn't really faze you. I mean, there's pictures of you and Tommy drenched in champagne, and it's on the cover of the book, you know, winning. But even then, before the national cameras, you went out of your way to remind people that it was a team effort, all the way down to the clubhouse boy. And so this has been you over all these years. And so you left the Dodgers in, what was it, 98 or so? And you and Cheryl went on to have a wonderful life. You were involved in business, you were involved in teaching, you're involved in golfing. You know, life was good. And you were approaching your 80th birthday, and what was thought to be perhaps a minor detour in terms of skin cancer turned into something quite different. And the skin cancer, you realized after some very painful times, had metastasized into the jaw, I believe.
Yes.
And why did you turn to the City of Hope? Why not go to Mayo? Why not go to MD Anderson? Why not go to Johns Hopkins? Some of the, you know, these facilities that are somewhat better known in terms of treating cancer.
Well, there was actually a recommendation by a doctor when they went through all the scans of City of Hope. And I knew of City of Hope. I'd only been there once to see my former secretary, a wonderful lady, Rosie Gutierrez. who had ultimately, after being in City Hope, passed away. But everything I had heard about City Hope was good. I knew it was close. I did reach out because when I heard about the type of cancer that I had, my first thought was, is there a doctor, is there a hospital that specializes in a cancer to the head and neck? And did some exploring. But fortunately for me, made the decision, maybe it was just part of it, the proximity, knowing that it was close, knowing we could get there. But when I first went into City of Hope, and my doctor, Dr. Gurnan, said almost immediately, call me TJ. And the comfort level that I had about everything that I saw there. And then when I got further involved and went through 33 radiations to my head and neck and went through chemotherapy and walked in there literally day after day, I thought, wow, this is something special. Mm-hmm. And that's how the book evolved, Tim, is that I walked into the Biller Center and said, where is your recent book on City Hope? And they said, we don't have a recent book. I said, well, you need one. Right. There's going to be one. And then I thought about, what can we do? And I called upon a City Hope person who would help us get started, and said, I'm going to have a golf tournament to raise money for City of Hope. And so through Lupe Santana, our navigator, she arranged for that meeting. This was 2017. And I remember as the person I met with walked away, my wonderful Cheryl said, Fred, you've got to be the only patient City Hope just given a 20% chance of survival who's planning a golf tournament. I said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I'll tell you, Tim, it's really fascinating. When I walk into City of Hope, then in the beginning, and more than ever now, today, it's the closest feeling I've ever had to walking into the Dodger clubhouse. And the reason for that, when I walked into the Dodger clubhouse, we had a common bond. We were there for only one reason: to win that game tonight. Win the pennant this season in spring training. City of Hope is at a higher level. When I walk in there, I realize people are here fighting for their lives and assisted by people who are helping them. That's a powerful thing. And so that closeness has been very important to Cheryl and myself. And it's, I didn't run from that, as you know. I wanted to promote City of Hope. And so doing, it's amazing the calls that I receive from people saying, Fred, tell me about City of Hope, and the blessing that I have had through the wonderful people at City of Hope to get second opinions for others. So it's truly, it's been the, actually the greatest gift of my life that affiliation. It truly has been.
Uh, you know, I remember when we first met, we were introduced by your publisher, and and we talked about City of Hope, and we talked about baseball, and I think you could tell I was a baseball guy too, so that was probably good. But on our first conversation, he said, "Tim, I think this is a marriage made in heaven." And I think you were probably right. But anyway, so we got involved in writing a book, and you were talking about City of Hope, and then I went out and spent a couple of days at City of Hope, and I saw what you were talking about. And it was the most extraordinary experience because every one of these world-class researchers, surgeons, clinicians were all the most, just the most humble, humane, committed people. I mean, T.J. Gernon, I remember him telling me his story. T.J. Gernon, world-renowned surgeon of the head and neck, who became your doctor. Armenia Massarelli, your oncologist. I mean, all these people are the world-class at what they do, but they're also just so profoundly wonderful human beings. And TJ said, I'm just like a plumber of the neck. I do this. Plumbers do important stuff too. I'm no different than anybody. And I was told by Robert Stone, the CEO on down, is that if you come to City of Hope with that huge ego and you're not motivated primarily by helping people heal and survive, then this isn't the right place for you. No. And the thing about it is that it just permeates that place. And it has become your mission. And we've got a clip that from a familiar voice that Sam, I don't know if you're ready, that everybody has talked about, that what you're doing, what the cause you adopted after you got sick yourself was, much more important probably to you and to the world than what happened in 1988. So I want to hear this gentleman describe it.
You knew that there was a lot more left to Fred Clare. And when he came down with the disease, it was almost as if God said, you're not working with the Dodgers now, but you can be inspirational to millions of people. And that's your job now. From general manager, you're now moving into another area. And he would not buckle an inch. He met it head on. And that's really, with all the baseball things behind him, what he has done with the cancer, surviving, having the surgery, living through all the mental and physical pain. That's his greatest accomplishment. He couldn't top that in baseball if he tried.
Wonderful to hear his voice, and those words mean so much to me because my respect for Vinny could not have been greater. I don't know, and I put he and Coach Wooden in kind of the same class or position. I've never known two more famous people who handled their roles with such humility. In all the years, and I knew Vinny for 50 years, never saw him turn down an autograph request. Always saw him polite. Always saw him appreciative of the friendships and of the people who so admired his work. I just think they set great examples, but wonderful and extremely meaningful to hear the words of Vinny. And Vinny had a way of putting life in its perspective. And there was one quote that stands out as I hit the age of 90. in Vinny's own words, which were always so wonderful. Those words from Vinny were, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. There was that life perspective of Vinny, and I think that's why he was so admired. Everyone felt close to Vinny. It wasn't just his ability, his voice, his descriptions, which to me were the best of any announcer in baseball history. It was indeed his humanity. And I remember in his last years, one day we talked, and he said, you know, Fred, if I didn't have my doctor's appointments, I wouldn't have any social life at all. And that was Vinny with life in perspective. So we want to, and it's not as if you had to work for the Dodgers to know Vinny. I've encountered so many people who thought of Vinny as a friend or family member. Back to Vinny, and I now see I have 54%, so it's a little bit better now. A young man came to me, I may have told you this story, and wanted to be a radio announcer and asked if he could interview Vin. So after several weeks, we put it in place. So he took his tape recorder, he went in to interview Vin, and spent about 45 minutes or more. He came back to me half hour later in tears. He said, Fred, my recorder didn't work. What can I do? He was devastated. And I said, I'll go see Vin. And Vinny said, and Fred follows, let's do it again. Well, Tim, I think one thing that helped me in thinking about it was the realization of how fortunate I had been in my life. I can't really say that if I'd had this diagnosis at 20 or 40 or even 50, that mentally I could have coped with it as well as I did. Mm-hmm. Because I had tremendous confidence in my doctors, the team, and I was blessed with no fear, which is a true blessing. I knew that, again, somewhat tritely perhaps, that I was going to do everything I could to continue the fight. But I wasn't afraid of losing. And I think you have to handle that because you do have to stay. It's not easy to do, but you have to stay positive. And I think that in staying occupied with your actions and in your mind, and that's why the golf tournaments were such a blessing, because my focus wasn't on me, my focus was on raising money. So I think my heart goes out to young people, younger people. And that's why assisting children with cancer is so very important. But we need to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be an athlete, but you have to be competitive, and you have to be inquisitive. What is happening? What are we expecting? How will this work? And it's so important, Tim, and we've talked a little about it. It's so vitally important to be blessed with good support from family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And each of us, in our own way, can give that support to others. And I think that's very important.
Mm. The moment I'll never forget from all this is when Dr. Mazzarelli introduced this immunotherapy program. It was brand new. You didn't have test groups. You were the test group. And she told me, and one day I was at the City of Hope, that she told me that 4 people had been given this treatment, and the other 3 had died. And I remember going to you and Cheryl someplace on the campus, in a hallway at City of Hope, and I don't know how I introduced it. It was obviously a pretty sensitive thing, but I introduced it. I told you what Dr. Mazzarelli had told me, that of the 4 people who had gotten this treatment, you were the only one to survive. And the way I've never seen you looked what I would consider to be stunned, but it took you both. Your reaction to that news was particularly profound. And I think you both kind of teared up, and I think you hung on to each other even closer than you usually do. And so you were having an experience, not only by putting together a world championship baseball team, you were having a human experience that very few people get to do. Well, you get to experience a miracle. And then the question becomes, what do you do with it, right? And you have answered that question in a pretty remarkable way. And that's why we're talking today. And as I said before, the Extra Innings is probably my favorite journalistic experience, and one of my favorite books, but I think it's also one of my best books and one of my most important books, because these lessons that we've been talking about, and you wouldn't be able to say these things 30 years ago. There's a wisdom in you now that didn't exist then. I mean, just in the last 5 or 6 years that we've known each other, you have found a different level of thinking and being, and so this conversation is so important. And I just want you to remember, Fred, that when we talked about driver's licenses, when you get your driver's license renewed at the age of 100, you and I are going to find a convertible, and we're going to take a spin around Pasadena. We might not be going very fast. And I'm going to insist that you're behind the wheel, but you have your friendship, and I think you and Cheryl appreciate, how important you are. You continue to be in my life, and what blessings you are, and how blessed I am to have you two as friends. So now it's on to keep doing what you're doing. staying, and you're also, you got another round of treatment going on, so there's that. Keep doing what you're doing, and you say that when you're looking at the future, it looks a little different at age 90 than it did at age 30, but there is that ride in the convertible that I'm going to hold you to. So you just keep doing what you're doing. I just want you to know how much I love you and Cheryl, and the floor is yours to take us out.
Well, we treasure our friendship with you, Tim, as you know, and I look forward to that spin convertible. It's been quite a ride to this point, and I'm so happy that we connected because I firmly believe that the book about City of Hope will continue on, will be a part of City of Hope's history for all time. And so wonderful to have that connection, to get to know you and establish a friendship with such a great cause, and so many wonderful reviews on Amazon and other sites. And the wonderful part of the reviews is that, as I said at the beginning, this isn't to be a Fred book. That book was done. But in reading the reviews about City of Hope and others writing in what City of Hope has meant to them, has really been a wonderful part of our collective efforts. So with great appreciation, the friendship continues, and the ride in the convertible oasis.
Well, with that, I say so long, and this has been the Anything Mentionable podcast. All things considered, this is not a terrible way to make a living, to get to know people like you. So thank you, my friend, and Godspeed. Hug to Cheryl, and we'll see the rest of you next time.
Very good, Tim. Take good care.